Looks like a whole bunch of people are joining last minute here, so hold on 1 second. There's a lot of waiting for names. All right. I think we're just missing a couple people, so I think we should get started.
Okay, we're ready to get started?
I think so.
All right, very good. And are we live?
We are live and recording.
Perfect. Okay, welcome everyone to the Revere High School Building Committee Project Meeting number 17. Today is August 26, 2021, and the time is 5:33 p.m. Linda, would you like to take the roll call?
Sure thing. I'm going to start with Mike Picardi and the best looking shirt today.
Thank you very much. Celebrating Palm Silver Thursday here at City Hall.
Excellent. I don't see Mayor Arrigo, so I'm going to mark him as absent. Stacy Rizzo, don't see her either. Stacy, are you on and I'm just missing you?
I don't see her. I just spoke with her like 5 minutes ago and she was logging in, so maybe she's having some technical difficulties. I'm sure she'll be here soon.
Excellent. We'll keep going. Susan, are you here?
I'm here.
Great. Dr. Kelly?
Here.
And Carl Svensson? Carl, I see you, but I can't hear you. It says your microphone is off.
Yeah, he looks frozen. He might have lost connection.
Yeah.
I like that look.
All right. We'll hold off on that. Dr. Perella, I don't see him either. Jennifer Hayes?
Here.
Excellent. Rich Viscay?
Here.
Don Ciaramella?
Here.
Nick Rystrom?
Here.
Jerry Visconti? Don't see him. Patrick Keefe?
Here.
And I'm going to go back to Stacy. All right, I'll jump back down to Carl Svensson.
Present.
Excellent, there you are. And one more shot for Stacy. Your microphone is off. Oh, it's the headphones again. No, Can't hear you. I don't know if sign language counts in public meeting laws.
Maybe Stacy could just type here in the chat and we could record it that way.
Perfect. Stacy, if you're able to record in the chat, thank you. Yay, excellent. Recorded. Stacy is here and present. Thank you very much. No problem. No apologies necessary. We all have technical difficulties sometimes. I don't have any housekeeping items for this meeting, so I'm going to kick it off to the team. Brian, do you want to take over if I give you the reins?
Sounds good. Hold on 1 second. Let me get my screen shared.
Do we want
So-
to, oh, okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, real quick. I was going to recap. Excuse me. The agenda here. So we're going to roll into item 3. I assume here, and the first handful of these are verbal updates. We'll take over with some slides, mainly the slides that you folks have already seen for tonight. Sort of pick up at item 3, 4, and 4. But for item 3.1, we wanted to note that we did receive MSBA comments on the PDP this week, and this isn't an item that they were emailed out to the committee as well. I would say everyone should read through them. If you have any questions of the team on what's going on in there, feel free to reach out to us. But these are standard reviews for every milestone that goes into MSBA, and high level, nothing alarming came out of this. And I might ask Bob or Lynn to put in their 2 cents as well. But we get a handful of pages of questions from them. We have 14 days to respond. And the design team and left field and a handful of folks, including Superintendent Kelly and her people, are helping us craft responses to these. The target is to get responses back to the MSBA by next Friday. Technically, the deadline is on Labor Day to get these questions back, but no showstoppers. And I'll just show you the document real quick. This document was emailed around. It's a standard form of theirs that they just provide a bunch of general comments back. So again, I'm not sure, Bob, if you wanted to comment high level on this, but at least our team didn't think there was any major impact coming out of this. No showstopper news.
No, in fact, I would say it was pretty typical, if not light. There were kudos to the educational leadership team because they noted that it was very well written and thoughtful. They seem to overall acknowledge the program. They always reserve judgment in some areas. They wait until further submissions, but some of the big news is that they accept basically the larger auditorium. And as we've highlighted, the Delta is ineligible. They allow you to build more, but they won't fund it. They defer special education to the DESE. They have accepted the additional gymnasium station, which we justified through the size of the school, size of the enrollment. And they also accepted, the admin guidance. They're not going to participate in the Delta increase from their norms, but they recognize that this is kind of right size for the school. And overall, I think there's about 16,000 square feet out of the total building size of 432,000 that's considered ineligible. Most of that is other space. It's like the district admin and community health and internship programs. So no real questions on the technology and the future programs and other things that we're putting forward. So this, I think it's good news. It's pretty light comment.
I will agree that it's very favorable for the district, in my opinion, compared to other schools that I've seen.
That's great.
Brian, before we jump into further, I think we skipped meeting item number 2, which was voting to approve the meeting minutes from last week's meeting, or last meeting 2 weeks ago.
Motion to approve the minutes?
I just had a question on the minutes, if I may. Stacy, I hear the baby. Just on the very last, I'm trying to split my screen here so I can read it. The very last, the part about our homework that we had. Sorry, let me move my screen over. Okay, the homework for the school building committee was to review the options and audit add motions voted on the next school committee to eliminate the ad reno and the existing 4-story versus 3-story. I believe that some people were in favor of the 4-story, so I'm not sure like where that falls into play. And my other question was eliminating the ad reno. That's just specifically the ad reno, and it's my understanding that the reno itself has to remain in there under MSBA rules. I just want to clarify that for my own knowledge.
So I'll take the second question first.
Okay.
Yes, technically when we do the voting for, we already voted once to narrow down. In a couple of months when we vote again, the code upgrade only will still be in there for consideration. Okay. That's just sort of lurking in the background. I have a feeling it will finish last like it did in the initial ranking of options, but that option stays alive. Okay. And I think the other mentions for the potential removal of ad reno options and 3-story versus 4-story were stuff we wanted just folks thinking about tonight. And if no motion was made, no decision was made, and I think we'll get to that in agenda item 4 tonight on whether those options, whether we should commit to 4-story versus 3, and whether we're ready to say the ad renos are at the point where we'd like all the other options better for a number of reasons.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So can I just suggest to Susan's point, because I think it's confusing the way that it reads in the minutes. It sounds like the way the minutes read, it could be interpreted as we are going to eliminate the 4-story option in favor of the 3-story option. So I think maybe just some adjustment to that wording
Sure.
to indicate that it's a discussion in overall of all the options.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you for that. Thank you, Diane.
We can make that edit.
Absolutely. So do we want to hold on the motion from Stacy to approve the minutes and roll them over, make the change, and I'll issue for the next meeting and we'll approve them then, or?
Yeah, we can make the motion to approve it with those adjustments.
Okay, perfect. Do we have a second of that motion?
Stacy, do you want to make that motion?
A motion to accept the minutes with the amended changes for number, what was it, 4?
This is going to be for agenda item 2.
Agenda item 2, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Second by Susan.
Susan, thank you.
I just want to clarify, sorry, again. The amendment that we're talking about making to the minutes is in section 7 of the minutes. I know it's on this agenda number 2, but I think that what Stacy wants is her motion to say with the adjustment to section 7 of the minutes.
Yeah, it should be amended to that one.
Yep. 7,
specifically.
Right. The project update, project option updates.
So I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And I'll do a roll call for approval of that. Mike McCarty. I'm sorry, Mike, did you say yes?
Oh, yep, said yes.
No, sorry, thank you. and Stacy,
Yes.
and Susan,
Yes.
and Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Svensson,
Yes.
and Dr. Perella. I saw that you joined late.
Yes.
Okay, so for the record, noting that Dr. Perella arrived at 5:39 to the meeting, so voting on the meeting minutes. Jennifer Hayes, Rich Biscay,
Present. I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
okay, just to clarify, Rich, we are voting on approving the meeting minutes with the noted edit to section
I
7.
wasn't part of the meeting, so I don't want to vote because wasn't there.
Got it.
You can abstain.
Yep.
I just voted present.
Got it. Thank you. And Don Ciaramella,
Yes.
Nick Rice,
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Brian, back to you.
Sounds good. So if there's no more questions on MSBA responses, I'll just see if anybody does have any questions before we move on to item 3.2. If not, sounds good. Item number 3.2 is a follow-up from the meeting 2 weeks ago on, we went through some slides on design, bid, build, construction, procurement versus CM at risk. We got to the point where we just didn't have a motion noted. I think Carl had made a motion last time. So you folks tell me, I could run back through slides, I could answer any questions, or if the committee feels they're ready to make a motion or a decision on this, we can just move ahead.
If there are no questions, I'll make a motion to accept. Brian, tell me if I'm wrong. We want the construction manager at risk.
Yeah, I would say a motion to proceed with Chapter 149A, construction management at risk, construction procurement. That would work.
Okay, a motion with what Brian said.
I'll second that motion.
I'm the one who has trouble finding my microphone today. All right, so we have the motion made by Stacy Rizzo and seconded by Susan Grevelisi. We will do a roll call then. Mike Picardi,
Just to clarify, it's a roll call to go forward with the CM at risk. I say yes. The
okay.
baby says
And Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Grevelisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Dr. Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes,
Yes.
and Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Ciaramella,
yes.
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion to proceed with the project of Chapter 149A approved and noted. Brian, back to you.
Excellent, thank you. We'll, so left field in the coming weeks, we'll start the application to the State Inspector General Office. Probably take, could take a handful of weeks, a month or so to get that fully wrapped up. There's probably a few, couple diagrams we need to build to support why we're doing this graphically, and get it submitted. Usually it takes them a couple months to review. So probably by the time the holidays are sneaking around is when we should hear back from the IG with an approval to proceed with this. And around that same time frame is when we'll debrief you all on the advertisement and procurement process. And I'm sure we'll talk with Mike a lot for the CM at risk. So IG approval first, that should take the next, could be 3 or so, 4 months. And then after that, we'll move into procurement of a contractor and have them on board for schematic design. Next item on the list, item 3.3, recap from the August 18th Revere Housing Authority board meeting. This is a little bit of outreach to the RHA board, is something we've been talking about for a while. And the mayor and I attended one of their board meetings last Wednesday. I'm gonna really just quickly gloss through the few slides we showed them. This is all old info to you folks, but I just wanted you folks to know what's out there. I walked them, first off, the mayor kicked it off with a really good intro on really what the high level goal of this is, and the thought that this could benefit the city, benefit the school system, benefit the housing authority. I sort of took it over with an update on what we've been up to, what the committee's been up to since April 2018, back when the statement of interest that led us all the way to today was submitted to the MSBA. April 2020 is when they invited you in. You got us on board, you got the architect on board, and we proceeded through the preliminary design program, eliminated a handful of sites. We told them we're still studying various options at the existing school, we're still studying Wonderland, and we're still studying the Housing Authority site. We walked them through very briefly just to show the context of we still have some ad reno options. These aren't the live options for tonight. This is what we showed them last week. This is basically what you saw at the meeting 2 weeks ago. So we quickly reminded them we have ad reno options, we have new options at the existing site, we have Wonderland options, and we talked through how the evolution of the options at the Housing Authority here, and explained that we're really viewing this as a two-phase item, a phase one to sort of get a building built, and then a potential phase two to expand outwards from there. We then just gave them a quick summary of what the path forward schedule-wise would look like all the way through school occupancy for existing site in Wonderland has sort of one track, and the Housing Authority option has another track. And these timeframes in capitals here, what we wanted to stress to them to get building that first phase one. Right now, it's looking like we need an off-site new construction project by the city to relocate 154 of those units. And then as that building's getting built, phase two to relocate on-site housing into new townhouses in and around the project development. So that was basically the overview we gave them. I would say that it was, it certainly wasn't shot down. There were no real strong opinions against this. There were a lot of questions about how it would happen, what's the process, who's paying for it. And there was sort of an appeal for more communication back and forth. That being said, nobody was really assigned as a point person. We left it before it was tabled as keep us on your agenda for the coming months. And we're going to be working on another update presentation, the goal of which will be to lay out the process, at least a schematic timeline for the process to this phase one 154 unit relocation. So we're going to stay on their agenda. We're going to continue to work with them, and we're going to hope to get something developed enough here in the next couple of months that this option can really be weighed against the others, knowing that it has a degree of reality. Any questions on Housing Authority outreach? And I don't think
Brian, I'll just add one thing to that. We did talk about having a member of the Housing Authority Board join this committee so that there is some more consistent dialogue between the two groups.
Correct, and I'm hoping that's a specific item other than let's get literal about what a process is towards a housing replacement project. But I'd like to try to stress leading into next month's board meeting that I'd really like them to authorize someone to participate. The mayor noted that someone could be added to this building committee, but even just minimally getting me a name of someone I can talk to and make sure they have all this updated info, and we can bounce a bunch of questions off them to try to figure out the real schedule towards a replacement project.
In full disclosure, I am a member of the Housing Authority, but I think it's an additional member that's not really representing the city so much as the Housing Authority solo.
So, I mean, overall, it went well. Again, it wasn't, I think the concept was embraced, just a lot of understandable questions about how would it happen, when would it happen, what do we need to do, et cetera. They are going to be helping us confirm who's in what buildings, not who literally, but is a building a single occupancy, is it a family occupancy, and where are they? Because depending on who we displace, that might influence how those other construction projects might need to react. Are they building smaller units? Are they building family units, et cetera? That's it for item 3.3. If no one has any other questions, we can move forward into item 3.4. And Bob, I have the slides. I'm not sure you want me to drive, and I can. You can tell me when to go.
Sure, if you want to drive. Yeah, you can skip right ahead to Community Forum 3. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we got together. It was lightly attended in person. I think we had 35 participants, but the views, I think, afterwards started to stack up pretty quickly. I don't know, Diane, if anybody got a current tally or a tally after this, but I know we were around 120 before we broke. But anyway.
I can look for that quickly while you continue talking.
Sure. What we did in the community forum, because there was a number of months in between Forum 2, we went ahead and just recapped, who the team is, the timeline, what the vision for the school was. We went through the concept options and kind of brought everybody up to speed with the 11 options that are basically on the table. And then the focus was really on sustainable design presentation. So next slide, you can just see we had our sustainability team walk everybody through really the value of sustainability, really just talking about it not as something you're adding on just to be a green building, but really connecting it to educational outcomes and also health and wellness. So it was a little bit interactive. There were 3 polls during the course of the presentation. One was basically focused on the indoor environmental quality, and we had only about 22 people follow the polling and kind of submit, but it gives you a flavor for what people are thinking. No surprise that indoor air quality and daylight were the ones that ranked highest. All of them really are important. The second interactive poll that we had was focused a little bit more on the energy performance and even passive measures for a building. And in this one, the passive measures really ranked high, as well as moving toward net zero. And that was really speaking to specifically energy, but what we might want to focus on. And then last was focused on kind of the future and resiliency. So the future proofing, as well as providing community support, were the ones that ranked highest there. So overall, it was pretty good, engaging, and we'll probably schedule our next one as we get close to, or maybe as the decisions toward a final scheme are taking shape. I don't think I have another slide on this one.
Sounds good.
Yep, that's about it. I mean, what I put in here, and it was in the packet that went out to people, were just some of the questions that were asked and fielded. Really nothing overly pressing. Definitely some questions about the housing authority and how many units are displaced. A little bit more information on how Wonderland was described and how the site is effectively cut off by the train and by the highway, Route 1A. That's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer?
There are no questions. We could.
I don't have any questions. I had a comment. If you could, just and Brian, I'm sure you see and you hear some, for whatever reason, and I think that everyone's done a pretty good job with outreach and information. But there's always going to be that comment that people didn't know about things, and that that they weren't told, or there's no communication, or it wasn't very transparent. Even just recently at the city council meeting, there were a number of councilors that were quote unquote surprised to hear about all this information, which, you know, is very, very tough to believe. But I just want to make sure that we're constantly doing our best to make sure that this information is getting out there, because when it comes time for the heavy decisions, we don't want to have this major resistance. And I'm sure you've dealt with it before and you all know that. But anything we can do to, you know, and I know it's going to, you know, some of the information is sensitive, but anything we can do to make sure that we're getting out to as many residents and stakeholders in the city, I think will be really important.
I agree, Councilor Keefe, and I'd add that I'd like to talk to the mayor and yourself. I'd actually like to get a project update, probably with Left Field and Perkins Eastman there, maybe even in front of the city council at some point before this decision's made, because it was good to get in front of the Housing Authority Board. We can at least get through the dispelling misinformation point. And the other thing I'll mention is that I know the websites can always be tough, but the website is up to date. So if people are asking you folks questions, I do think saying spend some time clicking around on the website. All these presentations from these meetings are up. This presentation will go up tonight. I know that's not enough, just having it on the website, but I'd like to get out in front of controlling the info to the city council at some point soon. Something I'll talk to the mayor and yourself about.
Good. I just think that would be helpful. And again, not just the city council, but all of the residents. Thank you.
And can I just add to Patrick's point? At the community meeting, we did have a counselor there asking questions, and I believe Diane and other people explained where they can find it on the website, and also told them and made sure that they all knew that these were open meetings and anyone's invited to it. They're on YouTube. I mean,
right. I clarified that Monday as well, Stacy.
Yeah, I mean, and I would have thought with the counselor right there, that information would have gotten back to everyone.
We'll work on, I think maybe even the team will take some suggestions, and maybe by the next meeting, suggest a couple ideas of how we could make sure we're proactively getting info out there.
Yeah, I think we could have some targeted information sessions. Maybe there are some groups or places we can go in town to do that.
Yeah, and we've even something Lynn Stapleton has mentioned before, we can potentially help put out some monthly updates, some updates that go out to staff, updates that go out to through city or community websites. So
we have a software called MailChimp that we can send out email blasts to all the committees in town or anyone that signs up, and kind of gives an update either on a monthly basis or right after each of the SBC meetings, that kind of highlights what was discussed and puts links in there to go back to maybe the presentations or the website or whatever.
We also, as a note, we had John Smith, who was at this meeting, suggested via chat that could these meetings be on Revere TV?
And that's a technical question that I could certainly look into. I think superintendent or someone else might be able to help there. I'm not positive technically what it takes to get these broadcast out, but we can talk to some people.
And I think the right person to talk to about that, Brian, would be Paul Amato.
Okay.
He's helped us before get school department information on Revere TV. He's a good liaison to the folks that run that Revere channel.
Yep, I forgot he's involved with Revere TV as well. I can have a conversation with him and explain how we've been doing the go-to thing, and chat with some other folks. And thank you, John Smith, for the other name, and see what we'd have to do to get that pushed out. I think that definitely could help. Excellent. If there's no other questions on that, we can move into an options update. So before I hand it over to Bob, I'm just going to walk through some options here. I just wanted to set the table. One, to bookmark. As we get through these slides, I want to show one slide that is hot off the press today. That's a follow-up from some discussions we had as a team yesterday with the design team and with representatives from the school, really getting back into a topic that we bookmarked at the last submission with MSBA, and that topic is eminent domain at the existing site. So these, I want to sort of go through that after Bob gives an update, just on a little update that I'd like committee input on whether we should pursue it. I personally think we should. I think now's the time. I think it's almost a now or never in terms of being able to see what the benefits are to the building layout. And I also just wanted to remind folks that, you know, there's no requirement to, but I think a lot of us on the team are seeing that these ad reno schemes just don't quite deliver on what you want. And I think I've heard a lot of consensus around a 4-story. So if we could do anything to focus the design team's task at hand to keep refining these, I would ask the committee to consider whether we're at the point where the ad renos can go, and we're at the point whether we can decide on a 3-story versus a 4-story. So with that intro, Bob, I'll let you take it over.
Okay, so I'll say that the 11 options that we're going to look at, you've actually seen before. What's a little bit new is that we've put them together in a matrix with some pros and cons. We do have ideas cooking in the background, and we're realizing with 11 options open, it would be good to reduce them down so that we can bring you more focused attention on a few more viable schemes. So pretty high level. You can see at the top here, we've got the ad reno projects. 1A, the purpose of that plan was to avoid Article 97. So every bit of the new building and keeping the renovation obviously stayed off of Aracola Park. Basically, this plan doesn't really achieve the educational objectives of creating a true heart to the school and connecting spaces in the most optimal way. So probably of all the plans, this is one I could say is really a stretch to meet the educational objectives. It meets the program requirements and it meets many of the goals, but it doesn't meet some of the key ones, which is kind of pulling the school together with a heart. It also falls short and actually cuts the amount of parking compared to the existing and splits it up so less of it's near the fields. So for that reason as well, it's got some flaws. The culvert, which runs through the site, actually runs between those two academic wings to the right-hand side. And although we're trying to keep the majority of building off of the culvert, we're certainly needing to connect those wings so there's kind of a light connection between. It's not ideal. So the option to the right of that, in the middle upper, is a response to this plan. And what it does is build all the new construction, which is shown in white, pretty much south of the culvert. You can see the shape of the site and the culvert pinch the building into kind of a bow tie shape. Both of these options keep the existing gym, which is significantly about 18,000 square feet, I think bigger than what the MSBA would allow. This scheme does reclaim a heart to the school. It's a 4-story option. It is also short on parking significantly. In this case, we had suggested an option where we could do the multi-purpose field over parking, kind of on the roof deck, to get the parking levels up. But it's really a bit of a stretch on the side. I'd say one of the big flaws with this ad reno is it splits the fields, so they're not contiguous, not an ideal situation. The building is certainly improved over 1A. The bottom 3 options are building new on Aracola Park. 1C is where we started the journey. I think when we set out to plan the school, 3-story we thought would be ideal, but we can see that it's really stressed in maxing out the site. It's pushing right to the boundaries. In this case, the upper 2 classroom wings would be 3-story and the one closest to the residents would be 2-story. The building certainly meets the educational objectives, but it is also close to the highway, Route 60. And while we can deal with that from a classroom side, we can have triple pane glass, we can, have filters as far as concerns for air quality. The outdoor spaces are still, kind of subject and pushed out to that roadway a bit. I would say on this one too, we have improved the parking condition, but it would probably require additional study for some structured parking to meet the zoning requirements. 1C.A is a response to this plan to provide a little bit more relief. So this is where the 4-story steps in. Actually, the 4-story works a little bit better because when we have 3 wings, those outer classroom wings don't quite connect at the heart of the school. They're down a corridor, a short corridor. But we find that when we build the 4-story, it's a better educationally connected building because those educational wings filter right out and become part of the heart of the school a little bit better. It also provides some relief on the site for green space or outdoor space. Has some of the same site issues that I pointed out in 1C, but I think an improved building overall, a little bit more breathing room. 1CB was a suggestion to just look at flipping and putting the face of the building along Route 60. And what we find here is, again, because of the culvert, we're really pinched with what we can do with the building. We don't want to build on the culvert, and it gets, the shape is really awkward to build on the other side of the culvert and then connect back to the building. So you can see the wings here are pushed uncomfortably close to each other, the academic wings. This is also a 4-story. There really isn't enough circulation space up front. There's enough to have a face of a building, but really not support it with much parking and drop off. So there's very separate bus and car. Most of the parking is in the back. And I would say by turning the face, we also find that the fields are pretty remote, feel much more remote to the overall building and campus. I'll go to the next series. So here we have the top 3 options, of course, are Wonderland. And again, option 2A, we started with a 3-story plan. In all cases, we're building on the slightly higher ground and what's kind of pulled away, a little bit better kind of landscape to put the building into. The entrance on 2A is really around the side or the back of the building. The idea there is to pull people into the site, get longer queues for cars, and face the building toward the green space. There's plenty of mitigation we can do as far as the building, the rest of the building along Route 1A, as far as screening. Here on Wonderland, we see an increase in site program, and the thinking there is that because the land is really cut off by Route 1A and by the railroad tracks, even though there may be future plans to bridge those or to do safer crossings, it really exists as almost an island. So it's not as free-flowing for walkability and for connection and for after-school programs, so that's why the fields are increased here. 2A.A is just the flipping the options so that the face of the building, again, is toward Route 1A. Plan is very similar. The site is very similar. Does not seem to be an advantage in doing this. Just like the previous flip plan, if anything, it kind of shortens the amount of circulation and space up front and separates the field significantly from the main entrance of the building or the approach. 2A.B is a 4-story option. In this one, you can see there's probably room to rotate and turn the building here, but it affords a little bit more site relief. There's really no negative, it seems, to going to the 4 stories. If anything, it just gives us a little more flexibility and a little bit more green space and room to grow other things on the site. The last series of options, the Revere Housing Authority, starting with the 3A, which is the full expanded, or what you might consider a phase 2 to the 3B or 3B.A. This shows it defaulted or started with a 3-story building, so it spreads out a little bit far. It includes field space just across Adams Street. In recent meetings, we've had a site meeting and we've determined, what the priorities are. So we'll be modifying all these options to include, or at least track where 5 tennis courts can go for sake of competition and prioritize the baseball field over this, over the multipurpose. In all the options, we feel like the field over parking is probably a prudent thing to pursue. So where we go from 3A, which is the expanded site, 3B could be considered the phase 1 or just the building project all to itself. We would put the field over the parking that you see there. This option, 3B, is also 3-story. And so 3B.A just takes a look at tightening up the wings. You can see that the gymnasium wing, which is in the far back right-hand side, is a little bit shorter than in 3B. Same with the up front wing, which in 3B is the freshman academy. You can see it's now shortened because we have 4-story academic wings. So the freshman academy would be its own floor. So there's opportunity here to improve the parking, but in either one of these, I think we're talking about certainly a field over parking, so that if you were to only build the small version of the site, you do have some outdoor field space, you do have parking on a consolidated building. So the next slide really just takes us into, I think, the matrix, which we put together. We tried to get this out earlier in the week so that people could take a look at it. These aren't the only criteria. In fact, there are a number of things that could be listed here, but what we tried to do is only list the differentiators. So for example, good daylight is important for all school options, but we've achieved that in all the school options, so we haven't tracked that. Anything that's listed here is a positive, you can see in green, and those things that are a con are listed in red. I would say in aggregate, not going through all the detail here, and I hope people had a chance to do that. We are finding that the renovations are struggling to meet the objectives and are kind of riddled with some compromises. It's fair to say that the 4-story options seem to be an improvement on all the 3-story options. So if there isn't a concern about 4 stories, that would certainly hone the options in a more appropriate way. And then we've learned in these studies that each of the 2 flipped scenarios really hasn't gained us anything. If anything, it's maybe put in some more compromises. So happy to take questions, open it to discussion.
Just a quick question on the field over parking. Just an idea to throw out there. I was thinking about it. I looked at some options Dr. Kelly sent me. What about putting the tennis courts over some open space parking that's not for a field? I was thinking of maybe doubling up. Not so much the field over the parking, but possibly the 5 tennis courts over a parking lot and having hard surface on top of parking rather than a field. Just something to throw out there as a design idea.
Yeah, that thought crossed my mind too, because it seems to actually be a more appropriate use of a deck than fields. Although we've got an example at Worcester Polytech of a pretty good field over parking. The only issue there, I think that can definitely be studied. The only issue is that the 5 tennis courts don't cover as much ground, as what the field would. So we can look at it for sure. We'll probably have some extra space above the parking that would give us maybe a mix of tennis and some outdoor space.
Bob,
We'll
I don't
continue
know
to
if you want to maybe address the comment in the chat from John Smith. Also, I think it's related to the design questions.
Just to follow up on that extra space, there could be additional parking for the actual people who are using the tennis courts on that upper level. So there should be vehicle access up there as well. So some of that extra space that wouldn't be taken up by the courts could be vehicle parking access or road access.
Yeah. So definitely. To answer John's question, interested in not really particular or liking the building design, wondering why it can't be more of a circle or or imagine what might be a courtyard. Similar to Apple headquarters, and use the outdoor for learning. I think actually we're getting there. There's, one of the things that we're trying to do is create the neighborhood wings, and the thing that's beneficial about having relatively short academic wings is that you might not have as much circulation past them as when you close it into a loop. I don't think a loop's out of the question, even with any of these that have the 2 or even 3 wings. Connecting them back would be kind of a natural next step. I think you can see where we ended up with option 3B.A. That's kind of the last one we worked on. It's a 4-story scheme that does exactly that. It closes the loop. So there can be advantages to that. Makes what you do in the courtyard a little bit more challenging. You want to make sure it's, certainly maintenance free. But it's not out of the question to be part of the evolution of these plans.
Sounds good. Now,
John, did that answer anything, or did you?
I'm going to jump in just with the eminent domain update here, not just to maybe solicit some more questions as we go, but we'll load you up with all the info here and then go back to the options and see if there's any decisions to be made. But what you're seeing here is the current 1CA option. It's the 4-story option on the existing site. It's the one that I personally think is working the best as far as this site goes. And I thought this was the best one to illustrate. If we bring eminent domain into this equation, I've broken it into 4 zones here, and I just wanted to explain them. One is right out here on Belgrade on the entry. There's 5 lots, somewhere between 2.5 million would be the eminent domain value. You can see how this would allow an access road to more come in along the path of Belgrade, relieve a little bit of this crowding down in here. This gray line, if you squint and look in, is a retaining wall. It's going to be holding up the grade difference between the East Mountain area and the site. So getting a little more room to breathe in here would both be beneficial for the site layout. It would also help with parking. Breaking out this large area over here into a big triangle in and around Cary and Jandren. You can see how this would allow any of these site schemes, especially the ones that are a little more tight footprint, like the 4 stories, not the 3, to potentially have a lot more room to breathe. We could get a lot closer to what the zoning count for parking is. All of these options on the existing site, if I'm not mistaken, are less than the existing parking count, Bob, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so no new on-site option results in even the same amount of parking, which I think we've heard from a lot of people is going to be a problem, especially with upgraded site amenities. So potentially these areas could be, this area sort of up on the plateau would also help relieve having a field right up against a retaining wall in this corner. This area would allow for a whole different entry and parking experience. And I'm highlighting the 2 commercial structures out on the road here that potentially could allow an egress loop. I know police and fire would love it if we can get a real egress loop here. I'm not suggesting that we bring school traffic in and out over here. The long story short is, by using the same metrics we used with previous eminent domain options, this would be a $20 million premium on this option. And this option, if we boil the general options that you, the committee, gave us at the end of the last phase, this was the second to least expensive option out of those 5. Adding the 20 million in does not change its spot in that ranking. It still would be the second least expensive option as we go into further pricing. So before we're too far with the design team and the landscape team going out there with a bunch of other schemes, I really felt like this is a scheme that we should pursue. I think we should see where this goes, what this allows us to hit parking count wise, understanding that it's still under the budget of some of your other options. So I wanted to throw that in, and I'm just going to go back out to the general, that you could apply this to any of these on-site options. I don't think it really fundamentally benefits either of the ad renos still. As you can see, as Bob explained, we're really splitting the site with these ad renos. And it could benefit any of these options, but we're looking for your opinion on that. And we're looking for your opinion on whether these flipped options bring anything to the table.
So I'll jump in. I think starting with the ad renos, I don't feel like they're a great option for us. I'm just trying to fathom what it would be like to have kids in that building while the ad reno is happening, especially because it's such a small school site to begin with. I think that would be really difficult, and it would be a challenge to keep kids safe when they're going to school every day in a construction zone. And with the flipped version of the building, the 1CB, where the main front of the building is along American Legion Highway, along with the Romney Marsh Academy, I feel like that would be, and I'm not a Revere resident, I would defer to the Revere residents on this, but I feel like that would be an absolute traffic nightmare to have at that point with the two schools combined, over 3,000 kids basically coming to the same site every morning and leaving from the same site every afternoon on a busy highway that's already congested with traffic.
Dr. Kelly, I would just quickly echo that the ad renos will be the longest and most disruptive experience, both for the school staff, school students, and neighbors. They're just fundamentally going to take the longest amount of time to peck our way around that building, building new and renovating. So by far, the longest and worst experience of any of your options here.
If I could add something to that, I have experienced working in a school that did the ad reno at Medford High School, which is a very similar building. They were the same style and probably created around the same time frame. In fact, I know so, in the early 70s. Anyways, it was a year and a half of a nightmare. Alarm systems would go off on a daily basis. Just the asbestos removal and things of that nature. And I know it has to be an option, but I would echo Dr. Kelly that it is something that would really and truly disrupt the educational setting for students for a chunk of time.
I also have to agree with what Brian said as far as how long it's going to take. And I have spoken to some of the Medford School Committee people, and they said it was just a nightmare for the neighbors, especially. So I wouldn't want to see that.
And I'll take the bait on a Revere resident comment and being a weekend architect here, but I do think the density of this new building, putting a large new building at the pinch point of the site, arguably in sort of the heart of this neighborhood, I think looking at these, you can see how the closer we push this building out in between RMA and the hill here, and if you consider the potential for eminent domain down in here, we're really keeping the mass of the building as far away from the neighborhood as we can. And if you think about the sprawl that existing building is on this footprint right here, right between all these houses, I think it really could be argued that some of these more footprint efficient schemes like 1CA that get the building all the way out here, especially if we can get some relief via eminent domain, I think that's the best experience that the neighborhood's going to get here. Obviously, construction is still going to be loud and disruptive, but we can fence that field off a lot easier to keep it safe. And ultimately, I think we're opening up a lot of density where the houses are and where people are, as opposed to out near the highway here.
I would say I'd be more in favor of the 1CA, 1CB than 1A. And I mean, I think 1A and 1AA probably is something that might, I know we're not removing things today, but it just doesn't seem like it'd be worthwhile. But then if you go back onto the next slides, when you looked at the timelines, one of the major issues I would have is not only not wanting to displace people from the housing authority site unless there was really a great option for them, but it looked like the time of completion was 2029. And I just think that, we're already working on a time clock that, we want to advance. I'm not saying advance hastily, but, saying 2029, as we all know, delays happen. You're talking like 2030 potentially for a completed site. That's a long ways away.
Agreed. And inherently, this option 3A is always going to stack up to be the longest schedule. And what we're trying to design this option around is at least getting in the new building what would look like this sort of phase one in a reasonable schedule. But all the way out to additional fields and relocated housing here it's going to be a challenge to make that any sooner than project end date, not building occupancy, project end date way out in that 2029, 2030 range. There's a handful of projects that have to happen to make 3A fully come together. So I do think, I don't think there's much of a point for the design team to develop any further schemes related to ad reno. And let's pick on for a second 4-story. If we're not afraid of a 4-story, there's no reason to be. I think people have voiced this. I'd like to move away from further development of ad renos and focus on development of 4-story options at the other sites, if that's the will of the committee.
Right, Brian, one thing I'd say, and I kind of maybe picked up on the fact that you may be thinking of shrinking some footage of the square footage of the building based on the increased height of the building. And I think that we don't want to lose any size or keep it equal by adding this 4th floor. I think the reason to add this 4th floor is to gain more square footage. So I wouldn't want to see the building shrink or stay the same by adding this 4th floor and take away some footprint somewhere else. I think the reason is to increase the capacity and the expansion for future use at the same time. So I'd hate to see, us to reduce some footprint and add it on the top of the building. I think the idea is to make the building as large as possible.
Yeah, fair point, Carl. All of these ultimately, each design will vary a little bit based on how the parts and pieces come together, but all these are on the same list of rooms at the same size. So in the end, the gross square foot will vary a little bit depending on the shape of the building, the location of the building. But the goal was mainly foundation footprint. Occupancy of the site is inherently less on the 4 stories. So we're getting more out of the site, and you're right, potential future usage, expansion, et cetera. We get more out of that too, going 4-story as opposed to 3.
So Brian, I would make a motion at this point that we eliminate options 1A and 1AA from consideration for the design team.
I second that.
Good.
Linda, do we need a roll call on that?
Yes, sorry. Can't find my mute button today. Yes, we will do a roll call on that. I'm having a little technical difficulty here, so I can't see any names, but I'm guessing everybody is still on here. Mike Picardi.
I just had a question on that. I thought we had to keep the ad reno as an option always.
So according to the MSBA's comments they just gave us, they want you to keep the code upgrade option in voting in a month or two. So these had to survive through the PDP. They did. We believe they can be let go. We're going to be putting not even reno, put an addition on the building, simply bring it up to code. We'll be back on for final voting.
Gotcha. And I vote yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Dr. Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes, I think that was a yes. It was.
Counts.
We're having a little difficulty hearing you, Jennifer. Sorry. Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Ciaramella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Motion approved and carried through.
Sounds good. What about, I'm going to keep picking on a few of these. If we all seem to be in agreement about focusing on 4-story, is that a decision we feel like we could make? It seems like they work better for all of these options. And I think the design team, Bob, I believe, agrees.
Yeah, actually, we were surprised. We knew it might have some site benefits, but it actually works better internally.
And it,
Do
I'm
any
gonna
of the
pick on
building
that one.
committee members want to make that motion?
Stacy, did you want to make that motion? I cannot as the vice chair. Oh, Stacy's gone. Any other committee member want to make a motion to remove the option 1C, Aracola Park new construction 3-story?
I'd be happy to make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Could we ask if we amend that motion to include the 3 stories at Wonderland, or do you feel differently? Focusing on the 4-story at Wonderland seems to be the same benefit.
So can I make a friendly amendment to Dr. Perella's motion to say that we remove all 3-story options from each of the different sites?
I'll second that.
Susan, that was your seconding that motion?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Right. Are we able to do a roll call of that motion then? Starting with Mike Picardi.
Again, just to be clear, what this motion is, there was a couple of addendums there. This is to get rid of all 3-floor options, correct?
Correct.
Yes,
That's
which would in
correct.
turn, it wouldn't eliminate any option. It just means the option's going to go 4 stories.
Correct.
Yep.
Then yes.
Okay. And Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Dr. Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes, I think that was a yes again. Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Ciaramella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
Excellent.
Sounds good. I'll pick on one more. I feel like I'm acting like I'm bullying the committee here, but the flipped options. Do we want to keep studying the flipped options, or and this to just go through them quick? The flipped option is 1CB here, putting the face of the building out on American Legion Highway, and 2AA at Wonderland, which is putting us out on the road here as well.
Can you clarify? Does that mean removing those as options?
Removing the what we're calling the flipped option. So basically, the Wonderland option Right now, we're down to a 4-story that's either facing an entry in the middle of the site or a 4-story with the entry facing the highway out here. And fine if we keep them, but it sounds like since we've drawn these flipped options, it seems like they just haven't really got much traction. You would still have an option at every site.
I think we should
I think you froze, Carl. Sorry.
keep them as they are right now on the north and west sides of that Wonderland site before we decide any.
Sorry, at least you broke up for me for a little bit there, Carl. Could you try that again?
He was saying he didn't think it was time to
I just think we
remove
should keep
those.
them on the. I think.
Yep.
I would agree that it's not, I'm not necessarily ready to rule everything out, you know, because I think traffic patterns and studies can be reviewed, but that would just be me.
Okay.
I think that Carl was saying, though, I think Carl was interpreting the idea of a flip site as moving the building on Wonderland to the area where we currently are showing the fields, which is not what we meant by the flipped site. Brian, I don't think that people are clear on.
Flipped building, yeah. Flipped building is the way to think about it. We've avoided putting the building further down into the floodplain, which is where we are over here, where the building is, the design team's recommending that all Wonderland options put the building at the highest level on the site, which gives us the best means of mitigating flood water. And what we're talking about flip was more flipping the building on the center access back and forth, not flipping the actual site.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just remind that when we put the front door on either American Legion Highway or Route 1A here, it just puts the front door really close to the roadway. It doesn't allow a lot of vehicular circulation up front. It seems to kind of separate what is the face and the entry to the building to everything else. It didn't seem to work in either case better. In fact, certainly created a lot more concerns on American Legion Highway.
Can I ask a question regarding the Wonderland site? Are there any options that we've examined or can examine that brings in an additional road on the northern side of Wonderland that connects I would say that side of Revere over the highway? Is that something that's too far-fetched to consider? Or because my thinking on the Wonderland site is it would require an additional entry or else I don't, just traffic-wise, I'm not sure how it could work.
So an additional entry parallel to the tracks here, I think theoretically could be looked at over the tracks from a vehicular point of view. I think the answer to that is probably no, but however, I think we need to see what we're going to learn in the coming months about whatever MBTA station is supposed to land here. That definitely is going to mean vehicular access. I have a feeling it's going to want to have vehicular access from the highway as well. So I tend to think that the evolution of the backside of this plan, including improved access, Dr. Perella, is going to need a little bit of cooperation from whatever this train station project is that, again, I'm hearing is real. That sounds like a half answer, but I think it's definitely something we could talk about with the design team, but it would be impacted by a train station here. Could improve it. I'm not saying it's going to take away the opportunity to get vehicular access in there, but it is a good point.
I think Carl just rejoined us, so I do want to see if we can get clarity on the point that he was making when he was breaking up.
Right, I apologize. I don't know if I'm having some type of technical difficulties, but my point was to make sure before we're removing any options that we're exploring the vehicle access to the site. And that was all I was saying. And I know what you're saying is that wasn't really the point of a flip, but I just think we should consider that entire site amendable to any moves of the building and not take anything off the table.
Yep, I think design team, I think what we'll follow up here is try to do our own little brainstorming about what might end up in here. I can try to get you some info. There is a street that dead ends, Paper Street, down in here. What we might want to do is to at least plan for some type of connection, that maybe it's a connection that comes along when that train station project is has gone through enough iteration to work with us. But I do think that breaking traffic into this back road is something that we should investigate a little bit at Wonderland.
Yeah, sounds good.
Is there any consideration of a pedestrian footbridge across the road? I mean, now kids walking from the Shirley Ave area, crossing the circle and trying to get to the high school, walking across oncoming traffic. Is there any consideration of a footbridge over the road? Because we're going to have kids walking into rush hour traffic, both at the start of school and at the end of the day.
So from what I'm hearing, that's supposed to be part of the train station. The train station is supposed to be over the tracks, and the train station project would provide bridge access from this site to back towards the existing high school and more safely through the area between the hotel and Amazon. Right now, I'm looking at that as something that is part of train station project, but that's one of the reasons I'd like to see if we could get whatever info we can about that process and what its goals are. Verbally, I've been told that that train station project would end up the connection that you're talking about.
Thank you.
I would only add that I think that has to happen. That has to be the option, because there's no other way to get students over that intersection.
Okay, I can look a little more into that. I did hear that a stoplight out behind the existing soccer field might be imminent. So sounds good. We don't need we don't need any motion for this eminent domain stuff. I just think it's such a no-brainer that Bob, your team, and Warner Larson should probably focus on the 4-story 1CA option and do a study of what this could get us. And again, my weekend architect view of this is that this could really open up some possibility to make this into a something that really checks a lot of boxes. Knowing that we have risk at Wonderland, we have risk at Housing Authority, I want to make sure we study what the absolute best option at this site will be.
Brian, does that mean that you pull that building footprint into section C? So you pull it away from the highway and pull it closer to the field?
I'll defer to Bob on that. I think probably, but I don't want to be the architect too much. Bob, what are your feelings on that? If we were to end up with this whole area, obviously on this side, it's relief for parking and access and fields. What's the benefit for the building over here?
Yeah, that's what we'll be weighing. What we want to do is improve a lot of different conditions on the site. We want to make sure the fields have the elbow room and they're not coming right up to retaining walls. We want to make sure the parking makes sense, and if we can also, get the building better positioned. So I think the only control here is we want to make sure new construction avoids the existing school building, and so that might limit how far west we can move it. But we definitely have more options here now, so we'll kind of study what's the best use and improved conditions that we can make.
Could we clarify that the bottom right corner that says C with the 2 commercial lots really should be D?
Yeah, sorry, I put the C's on there. In this little C's are just meaning that's a commercial property. So there is and I'm only noting that because that might run us up from the assessed value of this a little bit. But these lots are both commercial lots. I'm calling it area D. This big area is area C. Apologies, not so clear. The little C floating in space means that's a commercial lot, not a residential lot.
Is it really a commercial lot, or is it a residential lot being used as a commercial lot?
I think that's listed as commercial, but I'll double check that. I know it's a sort of junkyard, but I thought these two, when I rechecked the GIS assessors thing, were listed as office or something. I know these ones are, but I'll double check the one on Janvin, Rich.
Okay, because I would think that the area A in the small box on the far right of area C could remain, but the other two areas, they're all along Mountain Ave. I think makes a lot of sense to try to make that road all part of the grounds of the new high school. So, and there's a lot more potential for growth at Wonderland than those residential homes. So I know it's not reimbursable, but I think that's really something we got to drill down and look at.
Yeah, and
Well,
I
and,
like.
and the one thing I'll just add to that, Rich, is one of the advantages to not building on the existing site is that if we go with this plan, then the city needs to be thinking about building another middle school in order to relieve the overcrowding. So just keep that in mind with the whole, when we're thinking about the grand scheme of things and where the city's going to go. If we're not able to do some renovation and repurpose the existing high school building into a central middle school, then we need to be thinking about building another building.
That's where I'm hoping we can make some ways at the housing authority, which is going to probably take us a little more time to tease out, but I agree.
And I'm gonna throw in that at the next meeting in 2 weeks, just so it's not you're hearing a warning of it. But because a lot of this stuff, particularly housing authority, is gonna take a little time to get momentum, you're probably going to be getting a schedule update from us in 2 weeks, where we suggest pushing the determination of the final option from September to a month or two after that. I think we're going to really need to get in front of the housing authority a few times and have a real process sketched out for that for you folks to make decisions. So we're looking at what that ripples into schedule wise, and we can present that all to you. But I think we'll give you a schedule update in 2 weeks. And I have a feeling we're going to be saying, let's push out some of the selection dates and buy a little more time to really vet what we have going over at the housing authority. It also gives us time. The other thing I'd like to note is I'm going to be reaching out to some companies to get an assessment, a detailed assessment of Wonderland. We're going to ultimately get a handful of quotes, bring back the most advantageous, responsible quote to this committee, and ask you to fund it through the project contingency. Right now is at $45,000. Having the time to do that and insert some real numbers for assumptions on land acquisition at Wonderland will also enlighten the decision you have to make in a few months. So we'll be working on an assessment for Wonderland. It'll eventually come as a project cost. We'll be working on further RHA outreach, and I think that all leads us to closer to a decision approaching the holiday seasons as opposed to September. Let me jump back to the first agenda, sorry. That's all we had on our agenda. Anybody has any other questions, that's fine. Otherwise, we're past item 4 on the agenda here.
Motion to adjourn.
Yep.
We have to go through public comment.
Yeah. Linda, do you want to pick up the agenda?
Yes. So in regards to public comments, there is a couple of items in the chat that I think some of them were answered, but towards the end, John Smith had a question. Is there an option to build 5 stories for future growth for the school?
And I can answer that one. The MSBA will only allow us to build a building that is sized for the number of students they project us to have at the time that the building is built, which is 2,450.
And I'll add in, Dr. Kelly, that the MSBA will require the final option to have some viable concept for future expansion. That either needs to be additional site space to expand out into. Sometimes it can be adequate structure to go up. But we will have to demonstrate how these existing options could, in the future, accommodate expansion. That is one of the little details buried in the MSBA process.
Thank you. There is another John that has joined the meeting, and I don't see any other hands raised for public comment.
Carl, do you
Not
have
sure
a
if you're
radio or
referring to me or the other John, I joined a while ago, but as far as public comment, just to second what someone said a moment ago in regards to expansion, I know when we rebuilt the Paul Revere School a few years ago, we had put all the mechanicals on the roof, and we had eliminated some viable options for expansion because that school is over capacity. So we weren't able to go up, and we're really limited in our ability to build backwards or out. So I just, just taking a sound consideration, if we do go over the 2,000 some odd students and need to go up or out, let's make sure we at least make that transition as simple as possible and not put any obstacles in our way if we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just for meeting minute purposes, could you just give us your name and address? It's something that we're supposed to put into the meeting minutes.
Yeah, my pleasure. My name is John Stamatopoulos. I reside at 15 Sewell Street in Revere.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments.
No, thanks for letting me join.
And Brian, we should actually ask for the same information from John Smith.
Yes, John, even if you could stick it in the chat too, that'd be great. It's just we're required to put people's names on public comment for open meeting law.
I also want to say in regards to expansion, MSBA requires that the project indicate an area for 15% expansion, future expansion. So that will be included in the design.
Lynn, is that something that's new, or has that been in existence for the past 15 years?
Long as I can remember, it's been in existence.
It's certainly been around for at least a decade.
It's the first I've heard of it on any of the projects that we've been designing or building. So that's welcomed information.
Yeah, it might be interesting to go dig up some of the early MSBA submittals. Sorry, Dan.
To John Stamatopoulos' point, and Ralph DeCicco knows this too, I don't think that was considered at the Paul Revere site at all. Somehow they got away without that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that the steel and all the building, the way the building was built to be able to handle another floor. And I don't think that the fact that the HVAC units being on the roof would be an obstacle, because I think if the project were to raise up another floor, it would only entail raising those HVAC units up another floor as well. So I'm just curious if that was in the structural design to handle another floor, not so much restricted by roof units.
Yeah,
it's something we should look. Something we can look at, Carl, internally.
Great point.
You know?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that you look for the PSR for that project, the preferred schematic report, the report we're coming up to. If you can dig that up, or maybe even the MSBA has it on record,
Or even the
it should be in there.
Either one should show it.
Yep. Okay. I don't think we have any other business for item 6. Brings us to a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up and see if we could get a response from John Smith. I apologize, I didn't see anything. John, if you could enter in the chat. And also, Ralph. Oh, John, thank you. And Ralph, I inadvertently sent your message to Dr. Kelly instead of you in the chat, so apologies.
So I don't know if it's clear that you're looking for Ralph's address, Linda.
Yep, he did just respond. Both John Smith and Ralph DeCicco just responded via the chat.
Okay.
So at this point, I will happily entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting if there is no other business or discussions.
I'll second the
So
motion.
moved.
Okay, Dr. Kelly motion and Susan second. Beautiful. And I will do the roll call. Mike Picardi,
Yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
thank you. Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes. Yes.
Jennifer Hayes entered in the chat that she had to leave at 6:48, so she is no longer present. Richard Skate,
Yes.
Don Ciramella,
Yes.
Nick Rice,
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
And Linda and Brian and Bob, can you stay for 1 minute so we can talk about the high school team and their plans for tomorrow with the, I forget what it's called, that document that we have to finish and resubmit?
Yeah, the response, sure.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody else.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Committee meeting over for the record.
Yeah, you may
Yep,
want to
we can
stop.
stop recording.
Yep.